Welcome back to reInvent 2023. I'm your friend, sometimes, Kyle Dickinson, Senior Security Solution Architect that focuses on threat detection and incident response. And you might have noticed, my friend Adrian has gone. He's tired of my security shenanigans. But I am joined by two awesome people today. Two legendary people. The one, the only, Farrah Campbell.
Hi, everybody.
I am so excited to be up here when she's like, Kyle, you're not going anywhere. Please, let's talk about security stuff. I'm like, oh.
My favorite thing to talk about, yours is, right? Like it is.
I knew this is why we are BFFs.
Right, yeah.
And we are joined by who? None other than.
Shall I say? Yeah.
Yes, do it.
Okay, I'm Liz Rice.
You are Liz Rice.
Yes.
The Liz Rice.
Apparently yeah.
The Liz Rice. And, you know, when we were talking, you were like, Kubernetes, security. And I'm like, yes.
Good.
What are we going to be talking about when it comes to Kubernetes security? I feel like containers is such a big topic with customers and partners, and especially when it comes from like the incident response space too, and then also network security. What can we do to be better at securing our container environment, be it in EKS or even like Kubernetes hosted on EC2, all the things, there's just so much.
How long is this segment? Because I could talk about this for hours.
I was going to say, I mean, that's a lot we're getting into.
So I'm going to say we have about 18 minutes.
Okay.
So learn me well, please.
Focus in on. So I work a lot on the Cilium project. So I work for Isovalent, which is the company that originally created the Cilium project, which is best known as networking for Kubernetes. And one of the things that we can do is network policy. So we can limit which workloads are allowed to talk to each other in a Kubernetes environment.
So am I oversimplifying it when I say it's kind of like a security group, but for your Kubernetes or container environment?
Yeah, I would like to think of it as a firewall. And
okay, so even a step further than that. Okay.
Yeah, so in traditional networking, you have firewalls that are based on IP addresses and ports. And in the Kubernetes world, that is just not going to fly because IP addresses come and go all the time.
Right.
Your workloads get moved.
They
pods
scale
come up and
scale down.
Exactly. And so they keep getting allocated IP addresses from a pool. And a given workload, A, might have an IP address now, and in 10 minutes' time, that IP address might belong to a completely different workload. So we can't use that. We need to use Kubernetes identities instead. And that's really one of the strengths of the Cilium project.
And that sounds like doing security right, but also in a scalable way too.
Yes. And also we use a technology called eBPF, which makes things
and what does eBPF stand for?
So, well, it stands for Extended Berkeley Packet Filter, but basically forget that because it does so much more than packet filtering that we've started to really say that eBPF is just a standalone term. So it was originally based on this packet filtering, but now it's a way of customizing the way the kernel behaves. And that includes being able to customize the way the networking stack behaves. And in Cilium, we use it to intercept network packets and send them very efficiently to and from the pods that they need to go to. And while we're doing that, we can inspect those packets and do network policy enforcement.
Okay, so if it's inspecting packets, what about encryption?
Oh, okay. So with Cilium, we can do transparent encryption.
Okay.
Which happens at the kernel level. You turn it on. You have either IPsec or WireGuard encryption that protects all of the traffic between your nodes. And the applications don't need to know anything about it. You just turn it on.
So I can't have an application developer saying, you're impacting my workload. It's like, no, it's transparent.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're all about making...
Calm down.
Making things easy.
Wonderful.
No work.
Now, what about authenticating workloads?
Yeah, so...
You mentioned an identity. So identity, I always have an identity crisis, but that's besides the point.
I'm having one right now.
I'm working on it. So what about authentication? So if you have an identity, you got to authenticate yourself.
Yeah, so in basic Cilium, we use Kubernetes labels, which is the same way that services are built up. we actually more recently have introduced a mutual authentication using SPIFFE identities.
Spiffy.
Yeah, SPIFFE is a cloud native project, secure something identities for everyone.
If you're in the chat and you know what Spiffy is, drop it, please, so we all know.
Yeah. It's been a long week already, and it's only Wednesday. But maybe I can show you.
I would.
Shall I show you?
Please! I would love to learn in the power of magic. Bippity boppity demo.
Okay.
Wow, that was good. You are good at this.
I've been working on it for a hot minute.
Yeah.
All right. So at the bottom of the screen, we have a component of Cilium called Hubble, which is going to show us individual network packets that are flowing in a namespace far away.
And just to kind of set the stage where the ambush begins, we are looking at what, a terminal here, or
yes.
This is VS Code. Sorry,
yeah,
I'm no developer.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's okay. So we're looking at a command line.
Yeah, and ignore the top left for the moment.
Now,
top right, we can see.
Don't think about a pink elephant. Think about a pink elephant. Okay, I'm ignoring the top left for now.
I'm looking at the Death Star rule. I'm loving the names here. So
yeah,
okay.
we'll come to the Death Star rule in a moment. On the right-hand side, we can see a number of different pods that are running in the namespace far, far away. And if I show the labels, and these labels are what Kubernetes uses to identify different pods in different services, we can see that some of these pods belong to the Rebel Alliance, and some of them belong to the Empire. Now, if you are the security team on the Death Star for the Empire, you don't want your Rebel Alliance, well, you don't want the Rebel Alliance craft being able to do things like
find
land
the 3x3
on the
exhaust port that just defeated everything.
Well, funny you should say that. So, say, for example, you've got a TIE fighter. TIE fighter is from the Empire. It can request a landing, and that's all good. But we don't want X-Wings. Sorry, my cursor's moving a little bit slowly, but if I do the same thing from an X-Wing, at the moment there's nothing to prevent that from happening. So, and we can also see in the bottom screen, we can see individual network packets being traced out as they move through the network.
Oh, okay, so that's what's happening down here at the bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got a TCP dump going on the bottom, and we got commands being executed at the top.
Yeah, it's using a thing called Hubble, but it's very similar to TCP dump. So what we're going to do is apply this Death Star rule as if we're the security team on the Death Star, and it's going to say, I'm applying it to things that match these labels that are part of the Empire, and it's the Death Star. And I'm going to say I'm only allowing ingress traffic from other endpoints that are labeled with the Empire organization. So if I apply that, start policy, and now if I try to do the X-Wing request, it's actually going to hang because it's making the requests, and you can see at the bottom.
And then we see at the bottom,
dropped.
policy is getting denied.
Yeah. So those packets are just being dropped by Cilium's eBPF programs.
Or the person that's waiting to give them landing clearance is just slacking off. But this is because of that network policy that you've applied.
Yes. But if I do it as the TIE fighter, it's going to be allowed. Now,
I appreciate how you are making this make sense for me, by the way, because I am getting this to the T. You picked the right examples to use. This is awesome.
Now, we allowed the TIE fighter to land on the Death Star, but putting something into an exhaust port on a Death Star can be a bad day. So, we don't necessarily want to allow all traffic from all Empire craft. Maybe we want to be able to apply something a bit more specific and limit the API requests. Cilium is aware of APIs. We can look at layer 7 requests, like HTTP requests.
Okay.
And I could say, you know what? We're only going to allow post requests to the request landing port, and everything else is going to be denied.
Okay.
So I'm going to apply this stricter policy. And now, if I try to put something in the exhaust port, that is also going to be denied.
If only they knew about this so long ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Exactly. what's that? Shutting the stable door after the horse is bolted. But,
Right.
but yeah, so, and if we scroll back up here, we can see there was the HTTP request dropped because we were able to look at that particular request and it didn't meet the policy requirements.
Okay.
But we can still land, if I go back, where is it? There. We can still land the TIE Fighter. So we can be very specific about what we are going to allow and between which different workloads.
First, awesome example.
Thank you.
Second, this seems like it's going to make network security using containers, Kubernetes specifically, so much easier. Now, is this EKS, or can this work with EKS, or is it Kubernetes hosted on EC2?
Both of the, any Kubernetes deployment, basically.
Any Kubernetes deployment.
Yeah.
Now, how does someone start to learn about Cilium?
They can visit Cilium.io, which is the project website. I'm also going to shout out for isovalent.com/labs, which has a whole load of sandboxed environments where you can play with network policies, you can play with loads of other different Cilium capabilities, because we do networking, we do a ton of different connectivity requirements. You know, these days, people aren't just running their pods in Kubernetes, they also want those pods to be able to talk to external workloads. Maybe they're running on VMs, maybe they're connected over BGP, and these are all things that we can do. We can connect multiple clusters with Cilium. We can apply network policies that operate across multiple clusters, and maybe even across multiple clouds. So there's a ton of different examples on those labs that I mentioned before, so I really recommend checking those out.
And how long has Cilium been around?
Oh, Cilium was first started in, I think it was 2016 was the first commit, so it's been around for quite a while.
And there was just like wasn't it a documentary based on that at KubeCon, right? That was done on Cilium specifically?
It was actually on eBPF, which is the underlying technology that we mentioned before. It's super good. Like, eBPFdocumentary.com, I definitely recommend if you've got half an hour to spend. The production quality was incredible, and it really goes back to the story, because it's a capability in the Linux kernel, and persuading people that it would be a good idea to let custom programs run in the Linux kernel took a bit of persuading. So it's a really interesting story about how they went about persuading the Linux kernel community that this was a good idea.
I also want to call out, someone in the chat said, first of all, the names you used, epic, but also the names makes it so much easier to understand.
Brilliant.
Because, I mean, I'm of the belief that the Empire did nothing wrong. Chat, let me know what you think. But the contrast that you provided us gave us that example to where it makes it more approachable. And that's one of my big things I'm a huge advocate for, is making security more approachable. You don't have to be a wizard day one to understand what's going on. Make it fun, and then 100%. Make it applicable.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to get started using Cilium, you could go to the Cilium.io, you said, and then you have labs, so like a playground, so you could start to become more familiar with it before you're like, you know what, hey, I'm going to bring this into my production environment, which don't do that by default. Play with it in a QA dev environment before you promote it to production, right?
Sure, yeah.
Now, what would you say is the most fun thing that you've seen a person do with Cilium?
Ooh.
What, you mean apart from blow up a Death Star? I mean,
that's not fun. People lived on that.
It is for some people. It is for some.
Yeah, the Empire did nothing wrong. Okay.
Oh, that's a really tough question.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, Cilium is being used in like all sorts of different industry verticals and all sorts of different applications. I'm trying to think of one that's fun.
And I mean, it doesn't have to be fun. Maybe it changed how they had a problem that was serious, and you don't need to mention names, right? But it was like, you know, we're having a problem controlling how we can provide access to and from different containers, and this helped solve that.
Actually, maybe I'd go off on a slightly different tangent and talk a little bit about...
We love tangents on this show, so go.
So
be free.
There's a sub-project within Cilium called TechBeacon, and one of our actually, it was an Isovalent customer who really wanted to be able to, so they're like, this is great, we can see these individual network packets, but we want to be able to understand what processes cause those network packets. And what if we see like a network connection to some really dodgy domain name, you know, like reverseshell.domain.com
Right,
or
or sketchy.sketcherson.ed
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, and TechBeacon uses eBPF to look at the processes that are responsible for different security events. So that could be opening network connections, it could be opening files, it could be privilege escalations. And yeah, the idea for that really came from this customer who was like, okay, you've done this, that's great, now let's do a lot more. And it's really powerful. You know, we can really see in detail what process running in which container, in which pod, in which namespace, and when opened a network connection or opened a suspicious looking file. It's very cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. Farah, what do you think?
I mean, I'm like, all these words, I'm still trying to think about. I was trying to like Google some of these things and try to understand. I was like, what's going on here? I mean, I think I'm gonna have to go test out some of the labs, but.
So for those that are here at reInvent 2023 here in Las Vegas, Nevada, where can they go to learn more about Cilium?
So my Isovalent colleagues and I are actually camping out with our friends on the Grafana Labs booth.
It's right over there. I can see it. I can see it right there.
For those that are watching live, over there is not a direction.
Oh,
But
sorry.
if you go into the expo hall, you'll see a giant AWS Village sign, and it's kind of off to the right. But you said you're with the Grafana.
Yeah, Grafana Labs
So look
team.
for Grafana, and you'll probably see our friend Liz. And she'll blow up another
Our
Death
friend,
Star.
AWS Hero, also. I think we didn't mention that. We didn't mention that.
How could you, Farah?
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maybe I wanted to bring it to the end. You know, that way they can remember.
How long have you been a hero?
Oh, that's a good question. Can you remember?
Oh,
feels like a
okay. So the
while.
fact that it's not
3,
last
4 years.
that's
I was gonna say,
amazing.
pretty much since they started
Under
the program.
what domain?
Containers.
Containers. So
Yes.
Farah, explain what is the AWS Hero for those that are not familiar with it.
I mean, well, they're like the best people in the world to work with. I mean, AWS Heroes, they're people that are globally recognized
Wow,
for their
Farah,
work in
I'm just gonna leave now.
Well, you work at AWS, you can't be a hero.
That's fair.
You know, like.
I'm already the best people in the world.
You already are, yes.
So.
The
Sorry.
other best people in the world.
So they're also heavily involved in the community.
Heavily involved in the community.
That is awesome. And if someone were interested in learning more about the Hero program or even the Community Builder program,
AWS, you go to Amazon.com and you can search for the Hero program. There's a whole page that like lists out all their different profiles, talks about the program for the community builders. There's like a link to do the application to become one.
Definitely recommended. It's really great access.
Yeah, what do you like
really
about the
smart
Hero
people.
program? What do you like about the Hero program?
I mean, I get to do things like this. I get to hang out with you. I get to hang out with all these really smart
to
people.
hang out with Kyle now.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yeah. Would I have met you if I wasn't a hero?
I don't know. A lot of people seem to know me. I don't know why.
Because you're cool.
Maybe they
you're
watched
cool,
the news the other night.
You're cool and fun. You're cool and fun. You know.
They've turned on the TV and watched AWS OnAir.
I actually got a photo
room.
of someone that's like, I go to my hotel room, I turn on the TV, and look who I see.
Hello.
I did not know that. That was amazing. So apparently you can catch AWS OnAir if you're at reInvent in your hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Which is
I've seen it myself. When I went back to my hotel room shortly before I came down here, there it was. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be on that.
who's the large, loud man on stage? This has been so informative and awesome to learn about. I am going to look more into this because it really, aside from the awesome references, there seems to be so much more to it in securing your containers. Because when I look at container security, it's not, this is the first time I've thought about network security for containers. That should tell you something. I think about vulnerability management, but how can we control communications between containers and help isolate scope of impact potentially too?
Absolutely. I mean, vulnerability management, supply chain, it's all really, really important, but I think we shouldn't neglect what we can do at runtime, and like the preventative side of security can be so powerful.
Defense in depth.
Yeah, and then you wrote a book about this stuff too. So there, she
Yeah.
also has a book about.
Oh, geez.
Well, yeah, so I have
Network.
a container security book.
Well,
yeah.
Liz, it was such a pleasure to meet you today. I'm so happy that I got to meet you.
Thank you.
Friends at reInvent and joining us live on stream. Stay tuned for more awesome stuff. See you in a minute.